Welcome to the Consciousness Anywhere and Everywhere podcast. I am Shannon O'Hara, and I invite you to a completely new world of possibilities. Welcome, everybody. Welcome forward to the Consciousness Anywhere podcast. I am your magical host, Shannon O'Hara. Join me on this undefinable journey through the mysteries of the universe to access more of what makes life worth living. I have been on a bit of a hiatus from the podcast. If you are just listening for the first time to Consciousness Anywhere, please note there is a massive library of past episodes full of life-changing content, guests, conversations, tools, and possibility. We are targeting to launch a Talk to the Entities specialty class campaign this 2024. So as you are listening to this or watching this on YouTube, that campaign has begun with children and entities. And what is a Talk to the Entities specialty, you might ask? What is Talk to the Entities, you also might ask? Why would I want to talk to entities? I understand the question. Talk to the Entities is a body of work, a curriculum, series of books, classes, seminars that I created with the assistance of my stepfather, Gary Douglas, the amazing tools of Access Consciousness, and the contribution of magical beings. It is a educational system for all of you guys that are aware of ghosts, that have never been empowered to be aware of ghosts, never been taught any tools on how to deal with them. And it's like, let's face it, there's a lot of spirits in the world. And if you know, you know. And if you don't know, you might be avoiding some awareness. But in a totally conscious society, in a totally conscious universe, would we exclude awareness of entities? Would we treat entities as this superstitious other weird thing, or would they be included in society and dealt with like we deal with naughty people? So the Talk to the Entities specialty classes are deep dive focus on specific areas that impact and touch all of our lives in regards to entities. For example, children and entities. We have an entities and addiction specialty. We have creating with entities. We have money and entities. We have 12 Talk to the Entities specialties. Well, really, there's more, but we'll talk about the 12 that we're going to be covering over the next year into 2026. To invite each and every one of you to have more awareness, to get the tools that make your life easier, brighter, and lighter. The thing that inspired and stimulated this launch of the specialty campaign is I did a session with a woman in Italy about a couple weeks ago who got in touch with me because her granddaughter was going psycho in ways that they could not understand what was going on. The little girl would launch into hysterical fits where she was totally checked out and totally screaming and in reaction flailing around. And the mother and the grandmother were sort of at their wits' end. And I know I was the last resort, but she got a session with me and we talked through essentially if this little girl is aware of entities, and if she is having entity-related outbursts, number one, how to deal with that, and number two, how to empower this child to not be punished by that awareness, but how to have that awareness as a gift, not a curse. So that's what the Children and Entities specialty explores. I was an entity-aware child. There are many entity-aware children, and there are many entity-aware children that grow up to be really twisted and not particularly happy adults because their entity awareness capacities and abilities were invalidated, repressed, suppressed, medicated out of existence. It is my vision and hope, wish, prayer, and ask that people who are being treated for mental disabilities are educated about entities rather than medicated out of awareness. For what if when people say they are hearing voices, they are actually hearing entities? What about when people see things that other people can't see, they're actually seeing something that other people can't see? And whether this conversation is interesting to you or it's like stimulating a lot of fear in your world or a lot of conflict or sort of like, I don't know. It's been a long time. I've been talking openly about entities and exposing myself as an entity aware person for so long now that I forget the sort of like the repression and the confusion and the difficulty that people can have in this area, largely due to being told lies and being essentially disempowered about entity awareness. And in fact, not only were you disempowered about entity awareness, but were you told that if you were aware of entities, that you were crazy or wrong or making it up. What kind of a world does that lead to? So I will be releasing a new podcast that will accompany each Talk to the Entity Specialty each month as we open up the conversation. It's going to be an email newsletter with a ton of tools, content, inspiration on each specific Talk to the Entity Specialty topic. And it will be followed either it will be preceded or followed, we haven't decided yet, either at the beginning of the month, the end of the month, with a Talk to the Entities Facilitator roundtable hosted by me. And I will be joined by several other Talk to the Entities facilitators who specialize in these entity-related topics to go through cool stories of change, the use of the tools, and just anything that we can do to essentially normalize the conversation of entity awareness, bring it out of the wrongness that it's been in and into the strongness that it can be for those who are willing, So since we're starting off the campaign with children and entities, I thought would be a great time to give some tools, some insights, and some different points of view about how Talk to the Entities addresses spirits and children. And the first thing that you need to recognize with children and entities is that children learn through example from the people they're surrounded by, primarily by their primary caregivers, whether that's their parents or whoever that is. But they learn through example even before they can talk. They're duplicating, and that's how nature designed us to kinesthetically duplicate, to neurologically pattern the behaviors, the energies, the actions, the world around us. And for better or worse, that's what we do. And as a child, or really as a being, period, you're picking up on a ton of information and awareness that has nothing to do with words. Sometimes stuff is said, but a lot of times we're just present and connected to the psychic space that the world functions from and or the specific people who are raising us function from. So if you were raised in a household where entity awareness was considered wrong or evil or creepy or significant, or like if you grew up in Asia, obviously there's a very different ethos and point of view around entities than there is in Europe and European descent cultures. However, it has a huge amount of superstition attached to it, which doesn't really make it easy on anybody, including the entities. But essentially, it's like, how were you raised? How was the entity conversation dealt with in your household? Now, for some of you guys, it wouldn't be as relevant. You might not have been a super entity sensitive child, or it just might not be relevant. But for those of you guys that this is relevant for, it's like, how were you educated about entities? Were you ever educated about entities, or were you like told not to because it's wrong or scary or creepy or, or your parents just have absolutely no idea what to do with it. So they just sort of like refuse to talk about it. And none of that's wrong. It's just, let's evolve. What would you be like today if you were raised by totally conscious people? People who didn't judge, people who included all awareness. So when we're talking about children and entities, we have to start with the reality of that the parent has to be the leader. And if you're a parent of sensitive children and you're scared of entities, what is that teaching the child about their awareness of entities? So this becomes a very cool, symbiotic, reciprocal journey where when we seek to empower our children, we must also empower ourselves. So the first step with educating, empowering, dealing with entity-aware children is to come out of your judgments and points of view that talking to entities or seeing entities is wrong or bad. And because even if you tell a child that it's okay that they're aware or, that they're not wrong, if they perceive in your universe that you still think it's creepy or wrong or bad, they will be even more conflicted because they're picking up on your thoughts and they're listening to your words, which don't match. And this is how cool awareness can be. You can be aware of somebody's thoughts. You can have that psychic awareness and is that psychic awareness working on your behalf? Like, are you being psychically aware of that which expands the universe? Or how psychically aware are you and connected to that, all the limitations that people think are real or want to make real? So obviously we have to address this conversation when we're dealing with entities because there's so many unspoken points of view and attitudes towards entities. And if you're a child, you're looking to your primary caregivers for permission about life. Like, where do I function in the world? How do I function in the world? And if you weren't given the tools, or in fact, you were sort of taught against your awareness, that can mutate into a lot of psychological disorders and disabilities. I posit that a multitude of the psychological diagnoses that we know of in the modern times are due to entity awareness not being recognized and being invalidated heavily. So if we came out of the wrongness of entity awareness and we just included conversations about entities as normal fare, oh, are you aware of entities? Cool. Now let's learn how to work with that capacity, which is essentially what the entire body of work of Talk to the Entities does. And it's huge and cannot be covered in a single conversation. But the bullet points here about children and entities are, empowering your children through your own willingness to be aware. And even if you don't want to be aware of entities, can you give your children permission to be different? And second part is then to let your children teach you how it works. When you ask a child and have the attitude towards a child that what they have is valuable, and you put yourself in a position of receiving through asking them to teach you how to be aware or to teach you how they see things, it impacts in really cool ways, for it shows the child, even an adult, that what they have is of value. And it becomes a resource and a commodity rather than a disadvantage and a disability. So asking your children to teach you how they're aware and letting them know, like, hey, mommy's not perfect. Hey, daddy's not perfect. Hey, I still don't really get this entity stuff, but I fully acknowledge that you are very aware of entities. Can you help me learn this with you so that we can grow in awareness together? And then the third bullet point of children with entities is starting to teach your children the tools to talk to the entities. So these are the clearing processes, because we have the way you deal with entities varies slightly from situation to situation. And you have, entities that just need to be cleared. And that's a large majority of entities. And we've got the tools and the clearing resources for that. And if you want to learn more about the entity clearings, I highly recommend that you attend to Talk to the Entities introduction, to Talk to the Entities beginning, or just check out this free campaign that we're going to be doing over the next 12 months. We're going to be giving away tons of tools, but entity clearing is essential to teach every child, and entity communication. So how do trees communicate? And when you use the model of trees communicating as the model of how you communicate with entities, or how you could communicate with entities, does that give you some insight into the path of that possibility? So it's a pretty cool conversation. I would personally love to live in a world where people were having peace with their awareness, and where they let themselves have what is quote unquote not seen as normal. And what would it take for awareness to be the new normal, to stop being the judgeable offense and the thing that we're judged around, but to be seen as a valuable commodity in the family, in the society, in the community, in the relationship. Awareness rather than reaction, judgment. And what do I mean by awareness as a commodity? It's like, what if the majority, if not the totality, of all of the problems that you're experiencing, I know that's a big statement, all the problems that you're experiencing, what if those weren't problems? What if you were actually aware of other people's problems, and or aware of stuff that you've been misidentifying, and in so doing, handling stuff all wrong? Like entities, for example. You cannot handle entities by avoiding awareness of entities. I feel like that's obvious, but you cannot handle entities by using drugs or drinking or going unconscious. It doesn't handle anything. It just layers a big, thick glob of unconsciousness on top of it, which eventually the bill will come due to pay. You cannot avoid and escape awareness. You will have to pay for unconsciousness one way or the other. And many of us do that with pain, suffering, cancer, problems, lack of money. So if we didn't avoid awareness, how much, number one, would that change our lives and change the world around us? And what would it take for changing the world around us to be like embraced? What would it take for that to be like the cool thing that everyone loves? Like, we love it when people become more of themselves and the world and the universe changes. Not stay who you are because I can control you like that, So what if the majority, if not all of your problems, are a misidentified awareness? So when you have a problem like a backache or lack of money, or, name your problem, what awareness is this? What awareness is this that I don't get yet? What awareness is this that I don't understand yet? Starts to open the door to the fact that you don't have a problem. You have an awareness that could be a key to change and transformation if you have the courage to use that key and open that door of possibility. And so this is the gift that talking to entities can be for us. We can make it a problem forever, or we can have this bigger world that includes all beings, including us, judges none, and is so much more fun. So if you like this conversation, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, please, please, please tune in. We will be going on a journey over the next 12 months. Each month, we will release a new Talk to the Entities Specialty focused newsletter, Talk to the Entities Facilitator roundtable conversation, all free content. If you want to learn more, you want to dive deeper, check out a Talk to the Entities class, read the books, and check out the specialties that we're going to be diving deep into. The Talk to the Entities specialties were 3-part classes that I conducted myself over 2015, 2016. They exist in the Talk to the Entities shop. Let's change the world, you guys. Let's have a good time. Let's be the freaks that set ourselves free. How does it get better than this? I love you. I cannot wait to play with you in the fields of consciousness. And don't be scared. Be scary. See you guys soon. Thank you for listening to this show. My target is to make consciousness easy to find and choose. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes and share this with somebody who you know who might be looking for more consciousness in their life. You can visit me on shannon-o'hara.com or talktotheentities.com. And to learn more about the amazing tools of Access Consciousness, you can visit accessconsciousness.com and be sure to subscribe to the podcast.